VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk on VCY America. Today is one of those days we're calling a news roundup. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't recall when there has been a time when there have been so many issues going on that are of concern to people who hold to biblical values as to what's taking place in government, in our society, in corporate America, in education, and on the list goes. I have so much material here that it's probably good for 3 news roundup days on Crosstalk. And there are so many issues that we normally like to devote whole programs to issues, such as tomorrow, Lord willing, we will be dealing more with this drought and weather conditions across this nation with a meteorologist. And is this proof of global warming? So we'll be looking at some of those issues tomorrow if all goes as planned. So today we're going to have a news roundup. And we'll cover as much as we can to keep you informed as to just a glimmer of the many things that are taking place in our governments, in our states, in our society today. First of all, just to follow up to the program I did Monday with Phyllis Schlafly regarding this another UN convention, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. On Monday of this week, we made you aware of the fact that last Thursday there was a committee hearing on this by the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. We stated to you at that point that the committee was slated to vote today, Thursday, July 19th, on this UN convention on the rights of persons with disabilities, and that Senator John Kerry vowed that this would pass in the Senate before July 26. I peeked into the Senate committee today to find out what was their decision. I was astonished. All I saw as I went to the Senate's committee webpage, the Committee on Foreign Relations, the agenda today dealing with this treaty, instead of seeing their action on the matter, I saw this: postponed until further notice. I have a feeling that many of you have been praying. I have a feeling that many of you have been making phone calls to the committee members, both the minority and the majority committee members of this committee, as well as to your own 2 U.S. senators. But they did not meet today, and as it says to this treaty, postponed until further notice. I would encourage you, folks, if you have thoughts on this, number one, if this topic is totally foreign to you, I can't get into it again today, I would encourage you to go on our website at crosstalkamerica.com, listen to the program. Let's see, I guess that was Tuesday. It was July 17th, Tuesday, July 17th, with Phyllis Schlafly, in which we dealt extensively with this matter, especially during the second 15-minute period in the program. Here are phone numbers. Again, you'll find them on our website as well, but to the majority office here for the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, 202-224-4651. That's 202-224-4651. And the minority office is 202-224-6797. The committee did not meet today. Instead, just a notice postponed until further notice. It's my opinion that your continued phone calls are quite important. Meanwhile, Rick Santorum has joined this fight as well. Homeschool Legal Defense Association has been urging supporters to call their U.S. senators and ask them to oppose the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The treaty, being fast-tracked in the Senate, would undermine U.S. sovereignty and erode parental rights, says Mike Ferris of HSLDA. As I said, Rick Santorum has joined the battle as well. Yesterday, we reported to you on a decision by the Boy Scouts to hold their ground. Well, there are other corporations not doing so. LifeSite News reporting that Target, the Target stores, now selling greeting cards for gay marriages as of the middle of June. The cards produced by Carlton Cards, they report, include phrases like Mr. and Mr. and 2 very special women, 1 very special love. A statement from Target's Molly Schneider, a spokesperson, said Target is focused on diversity and inclusivity. Wedding cards relevant for everyone, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender couples. Target's been supporting gay pride events at Minneapolis for a number of years, and in May sold gay pride T-shirts, gave the proceeds to the Family Equality Council, a homosexual political advocacy group. If you would like to contact Target with your thoughts, their number 800-440-0680. And it doesn't end there. I was notified this morning that Office Depot has gotten into the picture. Yeah, office supply store, Office Depot. Here is an announcement from a group called Born This Way Foundation. Who is the Born This Way Foundation? Well, it's led by Lady Gaga and her mother, Cynthia Germanata. The Born This Way Foundation, founded in 2011 to foster a more accepting society where differences are embraced and individuality is celebrated. The foundation is dedicated to creating a safe community that helps correct young people with the skills and opportunities they need to build a kinder, braver world. Born This Way Foundation is kicking off their back-to-school season with some help from what they say are their friends at Office Depot. Limited edition products supporting their mission to build this kinder, braver world, available at Office Depot stores all over the country. 25% of the sales going to the Born This Way Foundation, and Office Depot has committed to a guaranteed $1 million donation this year. Born This Way Foundation, focusing on safety. When provided with a safe environment, young people are able to explore themselves. So we'll provide you support through an online community that engages users in ways that celebrate their individuality. They're going to, it's also a group that teaches advocacy. I can only guess what for. And providing ways to implement solutions and to impact local communities. So the Office Depot has these unique, limited edition products that include gift cards that are signed by Lady Gaga, Post-it notes, Sharpies, and bracelets, the multicolored, the rainbow-colored items. 25% of the proceeds going to Born This Way Foundation. You can go to Office Depot's website and just put in Born This Way, and you'll get all the information there. If you want to contact Depot, well, here's their number. It's 1-800-GO-DEPOT. That's 1-800-463-3768. Here's an update on JCPenney. As people across the nation have alerted Penny's that they're not shopping there any longer because of their assault on the traditional family values as well. In February 2012, JCPenney announced that Ellen DeGeneres was going to be their new spokesperson. Their stock price at that time, the American Family Association reports, was $41.32. Well, in May, JCPenney's launched their catalog ad featuring two gay moms. The stock fell from that $41 figure to $35.67. In June, JCPenney launched a catalog ad featuring two gay dads. Their stock went from the original $41, then down to $35, then in June to $25.83. And here in this month of July, S&P has rated JCPenney stock as junk. As JCPenney fired their marketing executive, stock prices falling to $20.02. Rather than build on the faith-based traditions of founder James Cash Penney, Johnson, that is the CEO of Penny's, has abandoned family values and taken the company into a financial tailspin by embracing social activism, reports AFA. If you want to contact Penny's, as many of you have, their customer service number, 972-431-8200, 972-431-8200, and their corporate headquarters, 972-431-1000. Now we're going to move on to Chick-fil-A. Yeah, Chick-fil-A. LifeSite News reporting yesterday that the Baptist president of fast food chain Chick-fil-A is facing renewed claims of homophobia after confirming his organization's stance against same-sex marriage. Dan Cathy, who leads the company, says guilty as charged. We are supportive of the family, the biblical definition of the family unit. We are a family-owned business, a family-led business, and we are married to our first wives. We give God thanks for that, said Cathy, whose father started the business, Chick-fil-A, in 1946. Homosexual activists have been calling for boycotts against the chain, which operates over 1,600 restaurants across the U.S. Annual sales last year in excess of $4 billion. Cathy said, quote, "We intend to stay the course. We know that it might not be popular with everyone, but thank the Lord, we live in a country where we can share our values and operate on biblical principles." Chick-fil-A is the fast food chain that maintains that policy of staying closed on Sundays. Well, it's not just in the corporate America as far as business is concerned, but LifeSiteNews.com reports that one of the world's leading news agencies, Thompson-Reuters, has endorsed same-sex marriage, but insists its corporate-wide political stance is not going to taint its news coverage on the subject. Thomson-Reuters, a merger of the Thomson Corporation and the Reuters Group, which includes Reuters News, publicly announced its opposition to a constitutional amendment in Minnesota banning the redefinition of marriage. They said, quote, "We believe the Minnesota marriage amendment, if passed, would limit our ability to recruit and retain top talent." Very interesting there. By the way, there is something going on there in Minnesota. I know we have many listeners there as well. OneNewsNow.com reporting that Minnesota voters are going to have the chance to decide whether to define marriage as one man and one woman in the November election, but the language of the proposed constitutional amendment is going to be decided by a court. Minnesota for Marriage has gone to the Minnesota Supreme Court, charging that the Secretary of State, Mark Ritchie, unlawfully changed the title of the amendment. Chuck Darrell, a spokesman for Minnesota for Marriage, explains why the change is a problem. Ritchie changed the language from, quote, "recognition of marriage solely between one man and one woman," to this, quote, "limiting the status of marriage to opposite-sex couples." Darrell contends the word limiting confuses voters, totally changes it. He said the original intent of one man and one woman is the intent of the legislature, who contends that is what Minnesotans should see on the ballot. That's what the legislature passed. But the Secretary of State, thinking he knows better, wants to change the wording to try and keep people from passing it. Well, the Episcopal Church this month has adopted legislation to give transgenders the right to become lay and ordained ministers. At the church's week-long general convention that was held earlier this month in Indianapolis, the House of Bishops approved proposals that would amend two canons to prohibit discrimination. It's canons like a ruler, so we're changing the measurement on a ruler. They would amend two canons to prohibit discrimination based on gender identity or expression in the lay and ordained ministry discernment process and in the overall life, worship, and governance of the church, reports the Episcopal News Service. Oh, friends, I've got so much more news. We're going to get to it after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, we've heard that human cloning has already been done. Is that so?
No, Chris, at least not yet. Now, there have been some highly publicized claims in the newspapers, but these are quite overstated. What has happened is that scientists have manipulated certain cloned cells to divide once or twice, but that's a far cry from cloning humans. Chris, I think a creationist perspective is essential in trying to understand this issue. Mankind is created in the image of God, and He gave us no authority to play God and to manipulate that image. However, this hasn't stopped many from attempting to clone humans for personal fame or financial gain. From a Back to Genesis perspective, we cannot condone such attempts.
We'd be happy to send you an information packet free of charge. simply contact us at 1-800-7-GENESIS. That's 1-800, the number 7, and the word Genesis.
Well, we've got a news roundup day here today on Crosstalk. I've got multiple stories I'd like to share with you today to help you stay abreast at some of the issues that are going on. And certainly some of the things are rather alarming as to the matters that are taking place. We're bringing them to your attention today here on Crosstalk. While I was on that topic, this is astounding from WND.com. In what appears to be an extraordinary reversal of military policy, members of the U.S. Armed Forces say that they have been given permission by their commanding officers to march in a gay pride parade Saturday while wearing their service-issued uniforms. One of the top officers who approved the decision, WorldNet Daily learned, has since entered retirement. The top echelons of the U.S. Air Force approved a request by a senior recruiter based in Arizona to join a uniformed active-duty military contingent in a San Diego homosexual pride event, reported the San Diego Union Tribune. The decision breaks down generations of tight limits on when and where a service member is allowed to appear in uniform and appears to stray from the Department of Defense regulations on the use of uniforms dated 2005 and signed by Defense Undersecretary David Chu, which says using U.S. military uniforms is prohibited in a number of scenarios, including connection with furthering political activities, private employment, or commercial interests when an inference of official sponsorship of the activity or interest may be drawn. First time wearing their military uniforms to march in a gay pride parade. By the way, Congressman Barney Frank, the first open homosexual to serve in Congress, well, he got married to his boyfriend earlier this month. Frank attended a ceremony with James Reddy, a carpenter, welder from Maine, who is 30 years his junior. Current Massachusetts Governor Patrick presided over the quickie procedure. The event was closed to the media, but attended by a number of Frank's colleagues, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, Dennis Kucinich, and others as well, Steny Hoyer, whose daughter recently came out of the closet. Nancy Pelosi said it was fitting that Frank's ceremony fell near Independence Day because such unions are about expanding freedom. Barney Frank's retiring at the end of this current term. Presidential candidate Mitt Romney spoke before the NAACP in Houston last week, making a statement, "I hope to represent all Americans of every race, creed, and," included, "sexual orientation." Then later in the speech said he would promote strong families and defend traditional marriage, saying he was opposed, previously, he said in this past May, he was opposed to same-sex marriage, but also said that same-sex couples have the right to adopt and rear children. He said, quote, "I also know how many gay couples are able to adopt children. That's fine." Romney told Fox News, Neil Cavuto, "But my preference is that we encourage the marriage of a man and a woman." In a surprise development, Mayor Vincent Gray Tuesday announced he had appointed Dr. Saul Levin, a psychiatrist and senior deputy director at the D.C. Department of Health, as interim director of the DOH, making him the first known out-gay person to serve as head of a city department that size. And let's go over to London. The Olympics. An Australian Olympic married couple claims that they've been prohibited from sharing a room in the London Olympic Village, even though gay couples are reportedly allowed to do so. Okay, well, let's get on to another topic here. This is from the American Policy Center. Tom DeWeese has been with us before. The Environmental Protection Agency, under the excuse of environmental protection, is flying unmanned military spy drones over farms in Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri to determine whether or not farmers are violating the Federal Clean Water Act. We've reported that before. He says never before in the history of America was her citizens' privacy rights been so violated. And now what's news today is that Senator Rand Paul has introduced his bill into the Senate, and Congressman Austin Scott of Georgia has authored a similar bill for the House of Representatives to stop the illegal and unwarranted surveillance of American citizens. Both bills are called the Preserving Freedom from Unwanted Surveillance Act of 2012. Let me give you the bill numbers. It is S 3287. S 3287, that would be the Senate version. The House version is H.R. 5925. H.R. 5925. That would put an end to the EPA's use of drones to spy on private American homes, protect individual privacy by forcing the government to honor our Fourth Amendment rights, force the government to obtain legal warrants and show probable cause in order to use the drones, and empower citizens to file suit against the government if such legal action is not taken. You can contact your congressmen and senators pertaining to those bills. And you know that Congress number, 202-225-3121, and the Senate is 224-3121. WND, after determining earlier this year there's probable cause to suspect the document released by the White House at Barack Obama's birth certificate is a forgery, now Sheriff Joe Arpaio said he believes his cold case posse's investigation should be advanced to the federal government based on further information released this week at a press conference. Arpaio told that he intends to move the investigation and the new information to a higher authority within the federal government because of what he calls an imminent threat to national security and U.S. immigration laws. The threat is posed by a flaw in Hawaii's law discovered by his investigators that allows a foreigner to obtain a Hawaii birth certificate. They explained that along with new information discovered regarding the birth certificate since the posse's March 1st press conference, their team discovered that Hawaii provides easy access to a birth certificate even if the child was not born in that state. Under Hawaii Revised Statute 338-17.8, a person only has to be an established resident of Hawaii, not necessarily a U.S. citizen, and pay taxes there for 1 year to be able to register an out-of-state or foreign-born person with an official Hawaii birth certificate. If a nation's security is only as strong as its weakest link, then America may be in serious trouble, Arpaio said. Interesting development there. Well, it's also interesting because of what is taking place. The Transportation Secretary, the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, approved flight training for 25 illegal aliens at a Boston area flight school that was owned by yet another illegal alien, according to the Government Accountability Office. This is an amazing story. The illegal alien flight school attendees included 8 who had entered the country illegally, 17 who had overstayed their allowed period of admission into the U.S., according to an audit by the GAO. 6 of the illegal aliens were actually able to get pilot's licenses. Discovery of the trouble at the flight school began when local police, not federal authorities, pulled over the owner of the school on a traffic violation and were able to determine that he was an illegal alien. Representative Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Homeland Security Subcommittee on Transportation Security, said he found the GAO's findings amazing. If we can pull this in here, we're going to see if we can pull up just a piece of audio from that statement.
We have cancer patients, Iraq War veterans, and Nobel Prize winners all forced to undergo rigorous security checks before getting on an airplane. And at the same time, 10 years after 9/11, there are foreign nationals in the United States training to fly just like Mohammed Atta and the other 9/11 hijackers did. And not all of them are necessarily getting a security background check. Is that risk-based security? I don't think so. 2 years ago, at a Boston area flight school, ICE discovered 25 illegal immigrants were enrolled and taking lessons. That's not the worst of it. The owner of the flight school was also here illegally. But surprisingly, the individuals had been approved by TSA to take flight lessons despite their illegal immigration status. So the same department that gave 25 foreign nationals a green light to take flight lessons ended up investigating those 25 for being here illegally. Mr. Lord, isn't it true that based on your report, the Transportation Security Administration cannot assure the American people that foreign terrorists are not in this country learning how to fly airplanes? Yes or no?
At this time, no.
That's what I thought.
Rather amazing. At this time, no. That was the head, the director of Stephen Lord, the GAO's Director of Homeland Security and Justice Issues, as he testified here on that very important matter. 25 illegal aliens attending flight school owned by an illegal alien. That's CNSnews.com. TheExaminer.com. Venezuela's avowed socialist president Hugo Chavez cautioned voters that should he lose in the upcoming presidential election, October 7th, that a civil war is likely to erupt. Quote, if the right-wing's presidential candidate gets into office, it would be an end to the social programs promoted during 14 years of government, and as a result, the country would enter into a civil war, Chavez says. Isn't that interesting? Making the government, everybody so dependent on the government that if he is ousted, that it is going to cause civil war in his nation, he says. This interesting, too, from WND. The Internet and talk radio have been buzzing about an executive order quietly signed by President Obama that allegedly authorizes the Department of Homeland Security to get ready to shut down all domestic communications in case of a declared national emergency, which includes new generation systems like the Internet within the United States. Just exactly what qualifies as a national emergency is not clearly identified or defined. White House Executive Order number 13618, signed July 6, 2012, entitled Assignment of National Security and Emergency Preparedness Communication Functions, could be used to prevent communications between U.S. citizens, allege some concerned, thus allowing the president to eliminate any and all opposition to his plans. Taken in conjunction with the NSA's new Utah Spy Center, which will collect and archive the complete contents of every email, tweet, Facebook post, Google search, phone call, and text message, and the National Defense Authorization Act, it's clear that the Obama administration expecting trouble from within, writes columnist Andrea Shea King. Horrible news taking place overseas. A suspected bomber yesterday in the attack on a tour bus that killed 7 and injured dozens carrying a fake U.S. identification card, reported the Bulgarian Prime Minister. The suspect, whose nationality has not been determined, had a fake Michigan's driver's license. 6 of the victims on the tour bus are Israeli citizens. The direct... this is Ehud Barak, said Thursday that Israel will do all it can to find those responsible and punish them, both those who carried it out and directly and those who dispatched them, blaming Hezbollah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised a strong reaction to the attack, which he said was carried out by Iran. Now, Netanyahu said this is an Iranian terror attack which is spreading across the world. Israel will react strongly to Iran's terror. Very, very interesting on this matter because the Iran supreme leader for the first time is telling his nation that it must prepare for war and the end of times as it continues to develop nuclear weapons. I want to tell you a little bit more about that after the break. Just give me, let me get a few more stories out, then we'll open the phone lines for you to comment on these. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
The Bible tells us that no man knows the day or the hour of Christ's return, but we are told to be ready, to look for that blessed hope, and to occupy until he comes. The Bible characterizes what the last times would be like, and observing world conditions today, we know the Lord could return at any time. When Jesus' disciples asked, "What will be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world?" Jesus carefully explained what the world would be like. In the book, 40 Irrefutable Signs of the Last Generation, author Noah Hutchings takes a thought-provoking look at these signs of the last generation and the importance of being ready for the Lord's return. This book is the size of a workbook and features over 200 pages presenting 40 irrefutable signs of the last generation. One copy of this book is available for a donation of $20, and 2 copies are available for a donation of $35. To make your donation to VCY America, call 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
I think we need about 3 days in a row of news roundup here to talk about the multiplicity of stories that are out there. But this one really caught my eye from WND, that Iran's supreme leader, for the first time, telling his nation it must prepare for war and the end of times as it continues to develop nuclear weapons. State-owned media outlets in a coordinated effort all ran a similar story highlighting Ayatollah Khomeini's message on the coming of the last Islamic Messiah. Shiite theology holds that great wars must engulf the earth, during which 1/3 of the world's population will die in the fighting, and another third from hunger, lawlessness, and havoc. Israel is to be destroyed, and only then will the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, reappear and kill all the infidels, raising the flag of Islam in all corners of the world. Under the guidance of Khomeini, several centers have been established in Iran on research and information on the coming of Mahdi, and a conference is held annually on Mahdiism. This parallel story, Iran has expanded its terror network and now has tens of thousands of agents in Latin America, according to a former Iranian official who has witnessed the regime's crimes against humanity inside Iran and has knowledge of its terror networking targeting the West. In interviews with the opposition outside Iran, the official revealed that more than 40,000 of the regime's security, intelligence, and propaganda forces successfully have been placed over time in Bolivia, Brazil, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Ecuador, and Venezuela. These forces consist mostly of former interrogators, torturers, and security forces. Many of them, according to the source, are other nationalities such as Afghans, Lebanese, Iraqis, and Somalis. And here we're giving flight school training. Okay, Americans for Limited Government President Bill Wilson today is urging the U.S. Senate to reject Mr. Obama's nominee Erica Grosjean to head the Bureau of Labor Statistics, citing her ties to a left-wing organization with communist roots and her radical views against small businesses. Quote, confirming Erica Grosjean would be a surefire way to substantially erode the public's confidence that the data released by the agency are not ideologically screwed, he said. Skewed. Let me correct that. Wilson wrote in an op-ed piece for the Investor's Business Daily today. Americans for Limited Government released a report detailing her decision to send at least one of her children to a camp that revels in its past as a, quote, red diaper baby indoctrination center. Camp Kinderland, where Grosjean sent at least one of her children, was founded by members of the Communist Party in the 20th century, sang Soviet anthems, saluted Soviet flags, and was investigated by Congress in the 1950s for its communist ties. According to the camp's website, Camp Kinderland is true to the vision of its founders. Wondering why would this potential nominee have sent her child there to the camp? 7 attorneys generals trying to block the federal health care law's requirement for contraception coverage saw their lawsuit dismissed Tuesday of this week by a federal judge who says they didn't have standing to file it. CNSNews.com reports that U.S. District Judge Warren Urburn ruled that the states failed to prove they would suffer immediate harm once part of the law is enacted. The Nebraska federal judge also noted that President Barack Obama's administration has agreed to work with religious groups to try to address their concerns. Yeah, I think his working with the religious groups was, we'll give you 1 year grace, and then after that, you've got to provide abortion coverage, contraceptive coverage, sterilization coverage. The lawsuit was challenging a rule in the law that requires this contraceptive coverage in health care plans, including for employees of church-affiliated hospitals, schools, and outreach programs. That includes abortion-inducing drugs and sterilization. Today's decision completely disregards the federal government's continued shell game when it comes to this rule, said the Nebraska Attorney General John Bruning, who was leading the case. He said essentially this decision asked millions of Americans to watch and wait for their religious liberties to be violated. Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt said he planned to talk to his colleagues in other states about an appeal. The U.S. Justice Department urged the judge to dismiss this. Meanwhile, 127 House Republicans led by Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann and the Republican Study Committee Chairman Jim Jordan of Ohio wrote to Speaker John Boehner and Majority Leader Eric Cantor, urging them not to advance any legislation that provides or allows funds to implement Obamacare, reports CNSnews.com. The House of Representatives holds the purse strings, said Michelle Bachmann. Now that the House has voted to fully repeal Obamacare, we should continue to do everything within our power to defund this bureaucratic power grab, she said in a letter. We should not rest until this implementation is blocked. The letter delivered by email and interoffice mails calls for the defunding of all things Obamacare, signed by more than half, 127 of the House's 241 Republican members. Meanwhile, as Fox News reported, Texas Governor Rick Perry said Texas will not implement key portions of this health care legislation despite the Supreme Court's recent ruling upholding the constitutionality of the law. Let's get to the phone lines. Let me open them up. You can get on board here. I'll share a couple more things as you're calling to get your reaction to these stories here today. 800-733-9829, 1-800-733-9829. I know we've covered a lot of ground. Here's a little bit more. Not only is the forced coverage here for sterilizations and abortion-inducing contraceptives, but also LifeNews.com reports that after reaching an agreement to send more than $1 million over 3 years to a Planned Parenthood in Tennessee, now the Obama administration has awarded $3.1 million in federal funds to Planned Parenthood affiliates in New Jersey. You know what happened in New Jersey? Chris Christie, governor there, vetoed state taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. So instead of state tax dollars, well, the Obama administration is forcing you, all of you across America, to fund Planned Parenthood. $3.1 million to Planned Parenthood in New Jersey, and that's after giving more than $1 million over the next few years to Planned Parenthood in Tennessee. Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Your reaction to these issues here today. Our phone lines are available. You can get right through to us, 800-733-9829. Let's go to Anthony calling from Milwaukee. You're on the air, Anthony.
Thank you for taking my call, Jim. I was thinking, we're living history right now. I mean, I want your comment. Do you think this is going to be a new era for the United States?
Well, we have been entering a new era in that we are becoming a socialist nation, is what we're becoming, Anthony, and that it runs totally contrary to our Constitution. It runs totally contrary to the laws of our land. We are by fiat. There's just laws that are being created without going through the legislative process. So we have not seen an action like this since the time of the Revolution.
Yeah, that's true. And one more comment. The congressmen and representatives that we vote for, don't you think that, that it's about time that we should just vote them out? I mean, not just one or two of them, but all of them, and maybe start off fresh. And I'd like to hear your comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And certainly it is you're the one who has to make that decision who you cast your vote for. But we would encourage you, as we have done so many times, to cast a prayerful vote. So often we go in and vote blindly. We say, if they have a D behind their name, they're okay. If they have an R behind their name, they're okay. If they have a C behind their name or an L behind their name, they're okay. If they're independent, they're okay. And we just go in blindly, and we cast votes without looking at the person, who they are, what are their principles, what do they stand for, what is their track record. And we need to look at those things. We need to evaluate them, not only by what they say, but what they have done in the past in order to make that decision. Because a clue of how how they've acted in the past indicates how they're going to act in the future as well. And so many have election year conversions, and that's something that that continued track record is so important, meaning that there are a number of people who all of a sudden become conservative leading up to an election, but then go right back to their old ways. So you need to know the candidates, not just judge them by what letter comes behind their name, but who they are, what are their principles, what do they stand for, what do they really believe? Are they there just to win the next election, or are they there to do what is right and principled? So there's a lot that needs to go into that decision, and to encapsulate it briefly again, this is where we need to cast a prayerful vote. Let's go next to Bill. Go ahead, Bill, you're on the air.
Thank you. This is what we get when you hire an activist to be president instead of a leader. He's been a community activist all his life. He's a dedicated Marxist, as shown by what he has done. And the amount of lawlessness on the part of this president is simply breathtaking. If this isn't a big wake-up call to the people of this country, I don't know what else it would take. I really don't.
Thank you, Bill, for your comments here today. Let's go next to Diane. You're on the air, Diane.
Yes, my question is, I have been proactive and conservative and pro-life and so on, and I have written to my representatives. Now I'm asking, seeing that this whole law has gone through, and what is there a legal area in Wisconsin? I'm saying Wisconsin because I live here, but maybe in other states too, that we can support that can go after this terrible situation we're in. It seems like even if I call and send petitions and so on, that it constantly continues to erode. The president comes in and does this and that, and millions of dollars going to Planned Parenthood. Help. Is there a legal firm here in Wisconsin that knows the law enough that we can back or support, or you can see my frustration.
Well, Diane, there are certainly firms that have been established. I guess that, the first checkpoint in all of this is those who represent you, your congressmen and senators, and to make that call to say, this executive order was just passed. This violates our Constitution. I want you to stand up and speak against it. Block this from going forth. I still have a hard time wrapping my mind around how somebody can just arbitrarily make this statement or sign their name to something, and it seems to have the weight of the law of the land.
Yes.
And we need courageous legislators who will stand up and say, no, we're not going to tolerate this. We're going to bring action against this. So that is certainly one line of that's available to you. There are national organizations, whether it be groups like Liberty Counsel or the Alliance Defense Fund or other groups like this that are out there that are challenging many of these things. We see even the National Health Care Act that is still tied up in some courts on different aspects of it. I know Liberty Counsel is involved in that concept of it. But it's more not so much statewide organizations, but national organizations that are putting challenges to some of these things. But having those that represent you in the House and Senate who are going to take principled stands on some of these issues is critically important.
Yes, and I have done that a multitude of times. And now we're at a point where we just see it almost on a conveyor belt, just one thing coming down against the individual, one after the other. So that's why I ask, and maybe an announcement by your wonderful, unique station that informs us that these national organizations are out there fighting just on a more regular basis. I don't know. You can see I'm frustrated because this is ongoing, and getting worse and worse.
Thank you for your call here today, and certainly staying tuned to programs like Crosstalk, also to keep you informed on these issues. We need to take a quick break, and we'll come back to more of your phone calls. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. Today is number 18 in our list of 20 characteristics of false teachers embraced by the false church. Number 18, false teachers, I believe, are part of God's judgment on a people and a nation. I think we can see that in 1 Kings chapter 22, 21 through 23, where we read, then a spirit, which many believe, by the way, this spirit was Satan himself. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. This is speaking of King Ahab and his 400 false prophets. The Lord said to him, in what way? So he, this spirit, or what I believe was Satan, said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And the Lord said, you shall persuade him, and you shall also prevail. Go out and do so. Therefore, look, the Lord has put a lying spirit in all of these prophets of yours, and the Lord hath declared disaster against you. We see 400 false prophets demonically controlled as what? Part of God's judgment on that nation.
You know, folks, it's really like the floodgates have opened up. And again, I have mentioned this before, but I go back to 2 Timothy chapter 3, where it says, this know also in the last days, perilous times will come, and we'll describe those times. And the answer, folks, preach the word, proclaim the word, tell people about salvation through Jesus Christ. It's only men's hearts changed by the gospel that's going to make an impact. This also from WND very quickly, Phoenix, Arizona, there's a fight going on over a Bible study in a man's home that's spilled over now into the Supreme Court there with the writ of habeas corpus filed by the Rutherford Institute, asking justices there to intervene and release Michael Salmon, who was jailed after repeatedly holding Bible studies in his home. City officials have argued he's violating the zoning code for churches because he's argued, though, that his Bible study is for friends and family. He shouldn't be forced to meet any city code. That wouldn't be applied to a meeting of friends for any number of parties or a Super Bowl party or any other event. And he has been fined $12,000, sentenced to 60 days in jail for zoning and code violations. And he's been held in custody, and they've filed emergency action there with the Supreme Court. Back to the phone lines here today. Let's see. Holding the longest has been Marianne. You're on the air, Marianne.
Hi, Jim. Thank you for taking my call. I've got a couple different comments. First off, I want to let everybody know that in the Washington, D.C., we have a national capitol, and the switchboard is open in the middle of the night. I know because at 3:30 this morning, I made my phone calls to the numbers you gave yesterday, Jim, and I want to thank God for the answered prayer for his postponing that. Mm-hmm. Second thing, I want to thank God for Joe Arpaio and pray for his protection again, as I have done in the past. He and his team really need the protection to be able to expose Barack Obama for everything that he is. And I think it's about time we start talking treason and traitor and about bringing him up on charges and arresting him. And some of the other people that have been pushing him, because he knows full well that he ran for the office of the presidency and took it illegally. He knew he was not a natural-born American citizen.
You know, Marianne, there's a very interesting story that's on WND.com today about another doctored up, what they're alleging is a doctored up photograph that it's too long to get into right now. That's certainly an issue, but we understand that the U.S. Supreme Court again is being asked to take up the eligibility issue here in their fall session.
In Washington?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God.
But we don't have a decision from the court. They're being asked to pick up a case dealing with the eligibility, but there will not be a response from the Supreme Court. They're in recess right now.
Yes, I understand that.
Thank you, Marianne, for your call here today. Brad in West Dallas, you're on the air.
Hi, Jim. Where do you start?
Yeah, that's where I wondered today. Here too.
I tell you, I heard yesterday, and I wasn't able to get in, but during the Boy Scout thing, which I gave them an amen yesterday over the phone for their standing up to the homosexual hate campaign. And I heard something yesterday where, they're not necessarily homosexuals, they're pedophiles. And I'm thinking, excuse me, if you're a man and you're having sex with a boy, you are a sodomite. I don't care what you want to call yourself, and I'm not tolerant about it. Now, with the House of Representatives, what Michelle Bachmann said is right. Defund everything Obama, because this lawless paper president, while not completely stupid, is completely on the side of our enemies. But first and foremost, like you said, preach the gospel, and like Jesus said, look up, because our redemption is definitely drawing nigh.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
And, folks, these are many of the issues that are going on here. Let me just share a couple more items. This caught my attention, too, from Investors Business Daily. A new report just came out from the Internal Revenue Service revealing that 36 of President Obama's executive office staff owe the country $833,970 in back taxes. Steny Hoyer, House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer, said Tuesday of this week, food stamps and unemployment insurance are the two most stimulative things you can do for the economy. Yeah, we get more people on food stamps, it'll better stimulate the economy. You know, we have seen haven't they doubled in the last 4 years? He was asked, well, why is that? He said, because these folks who receive these resources must spend them. And they'll spend them almost upon receipt. Most economists with whom I talk, he said, believe that those with significant discretionary income, and that's not the case. Unless action is taken by Congress, the Bush-era tax cuts will expire January 1st, 2013. Another showdown is going to be happening in regard to that matter as well. Let me see here. Oh, yeah. Late last week, in a move that went virtually undetected by the mainstream media, the administration made another leap toward lawlessness by reaching back, I'm reading from Tony Perkins, Family Research Council, another leap into lawlessness by reaching back into history and rewriting the 1996 Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, TANF. Under a new directive from Health and Human Services, states can now ask for waivers from the work requirement that's been a cornerstone of the welfare reform law signed by President Clinton for the past 16 years. As part of the largely bipartisan policy, Americans who applied for these funds were required to work, or at least try to find work or take classes. For almost 2 decades, those incentives have led to a record number of low-income people moving off the dole and into the workforce, where they have had the best chance of escaping poverty. So all of a sudden, there is a change. And Tony Perkins says this, the president's strategy is simple, to make people even more reliant on big government. Isn't that what Hugo Chavez was talking about, how they've gotten more people that are depending on the government? Here's a quote. He says, federal law expressly prohibits the secretary from waiving the work requirements. The statutory language here is so clear that it's difficult to imagine how Health and Human Services could justify the language of the memo or its primary object. No, you don't have to work any longer or seek work or anything else. Let's end on this note. Pot-bellied pigs must be granted passage on airplanes if they are used for emotional support by their owners, states the Department of Transportation's draft manual. They are saying it's if they are there to be service animals or to help people with emotional distress, then they should be allowed to fly on the planes with their companions. That's up for public notice right now for the public to interact with their department by October 3rd. Hard to believe. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.